The first time it's mentioned is in Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the second chapter, by far the longest chapter of the Quran, in verse 129, where the Almighty is mentioning the fact that Abraham and Ishmael alayhimus salam were constructing the house of God, the Kaaba, and while doing so they were praying to God. They prayed to the Almighty for a number of things, one of which was that they asked God to select a person from within this city, the city that this house is going to ultimately make. There are going to be people who will reside around it, and it's going to be a community, a place where a good number of people are going to live. So they prayed to the Almighty to bring a prophet who yatlu alayhim ayatihi, would recite before them ayatika, your verses, and he is going to teach them al-kitab and al-hikmah and will do their tazkiyah. This is mentioned here. In the same Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 151, the Almighty then goes on to mention that the way it was prayed for, the Almighty has sent now amongst these people a messenger from within them. And what does he do? He recites before them his verses, he teaches them Al-Kitab and Al-Hikmah, and he does their tazkiyah. Next surah, Surah Al-Imran, surah number 3, verse 164, the Almighty mentions again the fact that لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, God has been very kind to the believers. It has been a favor that the Almighty has conferred upon believers, that He sent a messenger from within them who recites his verses before them and does their tazkiyah and teaches them Al-Kitab, Al-Hikmah. And the fourth time it's mentioned in Surah 62 Al-Jumu'ah, verse number 2. Now, as I said, these verses are answering three extremely important questions regarding God's deen, His religion. Number one, where does it come from? Well, the verses say that God chose His messenger, Rasulam minhum, a messenger from within them. So, when it comes to the question of deen, it has always got to emerge from the Prophet of God, may God's mercy be on him. He is the only source of God's religion. That has been the case all throughout human history, ever since we had God's prophets coming to mankind. If one wants to learn about God's will, His message, His expectations, then there is only one source, which is God's prophets, His messengers. All other people are the servants of this message. They help others to know what the Prophet of God, the Messenger of God has given them as God's religion. So that's one point absolutely clear. The second one is, what does it comprise of? This verse or these verses clarify that God's religion comprises of primarily two constituents. It has two things put together which form deen. Number one, Al-Kitab, and number two, Al-Hikmah. What are they? Well, I have to talk about them, and I'll talk about them shortly. And the third question that this verse or these verses answer is, what is the goal? What is the purpose? And the answer is tazkiyah. What is tazkiyah? Purification, and growth, progress. What does that mean? Well, again, I'll explain it. So let me first pick the clarification about what Al-Hikmah is. We get God's message from God's prophets, His messengers. The message is comprised of two components, Al-Kitab and Al-Hikmah. What is Al-Hikmah? When you read the Quran carefully, you come to learn about the fact that Al-Hikmah is basically morality, moral principles, moral values, A, and beliefs, B. First, let's take moral principles. We know, and it's confirmed by the Quran, that the Almighty gave humans an understanding and appreciation of what is right from what is wrong. All humans, no matter which part of the world they live in, no matter which part of the history they belong to, all humans, when they come to this world, they come with an inborn understanding, appreciation of what is correct, morally acceptable, what is incorrect, morally unacceptable. Now, you might ask, how are you describing it as Al-Hikmah? Well, the answer is that there is a mention in the Quran in chapter 17, Surah Bani Israel. It is also called Isra, Al-Isra. From verses 22 to 39, this passage of the Quran is talking about a number of universally acknowledged moral principles. In fact, there are 10 in all, and there are quite a few exegetes and scholars of the Quran who believe that this mention is the Quranic version of the 10 commandments of the Bible. So it talks about the fact that we shall not worship anyone except God, that we shall be good to our parents, parents shall be taken care of, that we shall not kill an individual, we shall not come close to fornication, adultery, we shall not exploit the vulnerable, the weak, like orphans. Their wealth is to be taken care of. That when a trader is going to trade and is going to weigh, his scale has to be balanced. He's not going to commit frauds. That when we make commitments, we are going to be firm in our commitments, that we're not going to poke our noses in the private affairs of others and thus cause harm to others, that the poor people have to be taken care of when they are in need by the rich, and that we as humans shall never be arrogant. So all this has been described, but towards the very end the Almighty says, ذَلِكَ مِمَّا أَوْحَى إِلَيْكَ رَبُّكَ مِنَ الْحِكْمَةِ. These are the teachings that we have given you in the category of Al-Hikmah. So in other words, the Quran itself is clarifying that Al-Hikmah is actually moral principles. All humans share these principles as their very own. You might ask, why then did the Almighty had to describe them? I mean, God's message, ordinarily, we expect it to add value to what we already know. After all, if I am delivering lectures on Islam to you, I'll not start from the alphabets of English. That you already know. Well, the answer to this question is that even though we know what moral principles are, we tend to forget them. We tend to ignore them. So the Almighty has reminded us through His message. Why do we ignore them? Well, because even though moral principles are clear that they need to be followed, they are at times, probably on many occasions, difficult to follow. Why did we need to be reminded? Because we know that there are many things which are evil, bad, morally despicable, but they are tempting. They give us some immediate relief, excitement, and we give in to it, to the temptations. So the Almighty reminded us through His message, through His book, that these moral principles need to be taken care of. They are from me, and be sure that you are taking them seriously. That is why God's message is described as, apart from other expressions, described as a zikr. So the Quran calls itself a zikr. There is a famous verse of the Quran wherein the Almighty has promised that the Quran is going to be fully preserved. Verse 9 of Surah 15, Surah Al-Hijr, verse 9. The Almighty says, Inna nahnu nazzalna zikra. Indeed, it is we who have revealed this reminder, Al-Quran, in other words. Wa inna lahu lahafizun. And we are going to ensure that it remains fully preserved. So, the Quran is a reminder of the realities that we already know, but we tend to ignore and forget them. So, that's one part of Al-Hikmah. The other part of Al-Hikmah is beliefs. So, we know from the Quran that there are a number of beliefs that we are expected to believe in. The Almighty mentions in the 42nd chapter of the Quran, Ash-Shura, verse 52, addressing the Prophet, Ma kunta tadri mal kitab wal iman. O Prophet, you didn't know what was Al-Kitab and what was Al-Iman. Now in this passage, instead of using the expression Al-Hikmah, the Almighty is using the expression Al-Iman. So along with Al-Kitab, now we have Al-Iman, which really means that the Almighty is clarifying that Al-Iman is also a part of Al-Hikmah. Now, what brings morality and Al-Iman together? The answer is that Al-Iman, faith, beliefs, they answer the questions that arise out of the appreciation of morality. Beliefs, by the way, are acknowledging those realities that we cannot see, but they are there. How do we know that they are there? Because of the strong, overwhelming arguments supporting them. And we shall see that in our discussion in the module of beliefs, that there are strong arguments supporting the reality that these beliefs are indeed real. So these beliefs, they answer the questions arising out of the understanding of universal morality. The first question, why is this morality, these principles, universal? How is it that everybody has them? The answer is one God. Because there is one creator, one designer. Therefore, don't be surprised that what he has designed is just the same. The second question, why did he do it? I mean, it's problematic. It's being a morally upright person is not an easy thing to do. The answer is the life hereafter, the other belief. That is, this life is a test, and there's going to come another life when the way we perform in our moral domain is going to be ultimately made the reason for people being accountable, and it's going to be decided as to who is going to succeed and who is going to fail. So, this life is only a test, and it's the next life where the result of this test is going to manifest itself. Third question, how do we know about all these facts? Well, through belief in prophets, belief in divine revelation, wahi, belief in books, belief in angels. So all these beliefs are therefore a part of Al-Hikmah. So what I've said in this presentation is that Deen is God's message which He sends to mankind through His prophets, messengers. It comes only from prophets. It is comprised of Al-Kitab and Al-Hikmah, and the ultimate purpose of it is Tazkiyah. What is Al-Kitab? What is Tazkiyah? And some other questions is what I am going to address in the next session. I hope you join me in the next session as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.